you said loneliness is more damaging than poor diet or exercise. I was hoping you could expand on this a little bit more.
There's so much research showing that when we are connected, we perceive stress as less stress. When you look at meta-analyses that look at the effects of diet and exercise on lifespan, having a good diet, eating your vegetables, running, exercising, they decrease your risk of death by 25% around there. But having a large social network decreases your risk of death by about.
Whoa.
Hey, everybody. We've had some of the most incredible guests coming to you these past couple of months. The amount of expertise and knowledge on these cutting edge topics is something we really hope that you enjoy. And if you do, it would make a huge difference to us if you could rate, review, and subscribe the podcast. It helps us to get more guests, better experts, and talk about all of the things that are really important to you. So give us a love, give us a lot of love, and don't forget to subscribe so you get all our new episodes.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Thick Thighs Save Lives podcast. I'm Kelsey, and I'm joined here with Marisa G. Franco. I am very excited to have you on, Marisa, so welcome to the podcast.
Kelsey, thanks so much for having me.
So this is actually, I've done, 300 episodes, a lot of podcast episodes, but I don't think I have ever truly covered platonic friendships. And I'm very excited about it because we have a primarily female audience, who I consider all of my friends, and we have not talked about friendship.
It's about time. That's why I'm
That
here.
time. And I did take, if you guys, I'm just going to hop right into it, but if you guys don't know, Marisa does have a quiz on her website, and we'll kind of get into that as we chat about it. But I did take it prior to having her on today, and I thought it was very thought provoking and made me kind of like question how I can be a better friend. So I just wanted from the start tell you guys about that, and that you could, even before listening to this podcast, hop on and take her quiz, and then you come into the rest of the podcast with the baseline with what we're going to talk about today. So I wanted to ask you, just starting out, what kind of put you in this direction? How did you become an expert on friendship?
So it was a long time ago. I was going through this breakup and I felt so bad because I felt like, oh, like I don't have any love in my life. I'm not worthy. So I decided to start this wellness group with my friend Heather, where we met up and we practiced wellness. And it felt so life changing for me to just see friends regularly every week. And it made me question, why didn't this form of love matter? Why did I think I didn't have any love in my life without romantic love? Why did I feel like I wasn't worthy when all of these people already love me? And so I feel like friendship is gold under our feet that we see as concrete. And I want it to be part of leveling the hierarchy that we place on love and allowing people to experience the fullness and beauty of platonic connections too.
Yeah, honestly, I find that a lot of, experts who come on who have a personal event that happens that leads them in the direction has been like the most important topics, because like you internalize, like something happened to you where you were like, this is so important, so life changing, and I want to share it with the rest of the world.
Absolutely. Yeah, I definitely felt that way. I was just like this is, when you see something in society and you're like, this is weird, why is no one talking about it? And now
Yes.
more people are talking about friendship, but at the time it was just like, what are, like, friendships are just this relationship and this purgatory between when you leave your family and find a partner, and then you don't really care and you don't really invest, and it's okay to ditch them for whoever it seemed really fishy to me.
It does seem fishy.
Yeah.
It does seem fishy, and that is a weird, like, how you say, like, you have your family, then you have some, like, in between time where you have friends, and then you leave them and you have a partner, and we all just kind of, like, normalize that experience when actually
Yeah.
that is very weird. And, and really would benefit not only just, like, ourselves, but, like, our romantic relationships too, to have other, healthy relationships in our lives. And so, like, why do you think we culturally treat friendship as an option instead of a necessity?
Well, there's historian Stephanie Kuhn. She wrote about this that friendship used to be treated very differently. It used to be seen as a very primary relationship at a time when the 1800s, the genders were considered so distinct that you could only form a deep connection with someone that shared your gender, like a friend. So friends would like carve their names into trees, share beds, be so close. But at the time, women needed men. You know, we couldn't get a credit card, we couldn't own property, we hardly could get any jobs. So there wasn't this threat that if you get so close to your friends, then you might opt out of this institution of marriage. But slowly, as women got more rights, there's this sense that, oh, like, I guess women don't necessarily need to be married. So, how do we get them to still want marriage, even though they have this alternative relationship that could also be beautiful? And so then we see the kind of, cultural assumptions that we have around friendship being secondary or trivial, or one person will complete you rather than you need a whole community to feel whole, to kind of motivate people to still engage in this institution and not see friendships as a viable alternative for people that they can spend their life with or find deep fulfillment through.
Yeah, and it's almost if you have found some of that fulfillment through friendship, it seems to me, and this might just be my personal experience, but it seems to me like that's almost like constantly under attack,
Yeah.
where you feel like like, there's questions, well, are you in a romantic relationship? And it's like, no, we have a
Yeah.
platonic love friendship. And like, because you are assuming that that leads to it being sexual, like, that seems like that's on you. Like,
Yeah.
that seems like you're placing all of this because it seems like, we're constantly needing to defend those type of relationships, almost especially as women. Like, I don't feel like men have to
Yeah.
defend their friendships quite as much.
Well, we it's so embedded in our culture, right? We say like we're just friends, or you have a plus one, it has to be a romantic partner or a marriage, that's the institution where you can give someone health insurance or take off grieve time, right? Like there is so much embedded telling us that romantic love is superior, but I think interesting thinkers in friendship have disrupted the binary and said you could have romantic love towards your friends and it's not sexual, but this, when you hear women talk about their best friends, she's my soulmate, I love her so
Yeah.
much, I could spend all my time with her. Like it's very passionate, it's romantic almost in nature, not necessarily sexual. So to me it's like, how can we have this hierarchy of love when these categories aren't even exclusive to one another?
Yeah, I'm glad you the hierarchy of love because you talked about this a bit in your TED Talk, which, what stuck out to me during your TED Talk was, you spoke about a friendship that you have and feeling shame about loving a friend too deeply. And that really
Yeah.
stuck out to me because I feel like I have felt that before. And I think some of the friendships that I've had have expressed to me that she felt that way before because, like, is this too much? Are we and
Yeah.
just trying to, like, clear the air, and when you said, you put some language to it, like, I felt shame about that. I was like, That's exactly what it was. That's the language." So why do we get so much less permission with loving, friend than we do with loving our spouses?
Yeah. um well, in the late 1800s, people were moving into cities, they were engaging in more like same-sex sexual acts, and this is gonna be a tangent, but we're gonna get back there. So things were sort of changing, and it was scaring people, and before then, it was really stigmatized to have sex with someone of the same sex, but it wasn't sexuality as we know it today. It wasn't an identity. So it's just like, don't have sex with someone, not that if you hold hands, now you might be gay. If you say so you love someone too much, you might be gay, right? And so Richard von Krafft-Ebing and Sigmund Freud, they said that if you had this same sex sexual attraction, it was an entire identity. And they had this whole theory of how it was a disordered identity. And now it was stigmatized not just to have sex with someone of the same sex, but to do anything too intimate with someone of the same sex, because that might suggest something about your sexuality, right? There's this assumption that if we get too close, it's going to be romantic. And that is a bad thing. And that's a phenomenon called homohysteria, which is straight people's fear of being perceived as gay because of how much they love their friendships. And I think that tends to hurt men's friendships more. Actually, we see in women's friendships that
Yeah.
they're doing a lot of things in their friendships that men tend to only do in their romantic relationships, like even like vulnerability, a lot of affection, those kinds of things. But I think one of this impact of homohysteria in general is that we think that certain forms of love, once they get too deep, are inherently romantic and even kind of stigmatized versus like, how do you actually feel towards your friends? Like, what's your actual emotion? And can you just express what's actually there?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up, that there is some stigma, surrounding men and just like the history of how we got here because this isn't where we started. Like this
No.
entire like cultural stigma that we have developed around platonic relationships is not just like, oh, that's how it's always been. This
Yeah.
has been developed over time and actually is less, I wanna say, like, natural because, when we share, we're constantly looking for human connection, and if we're feeling that towards other people that we don't wanna have a romantic relationship with, that's important, and that's amazing. One of the things I did wanna ask you, do you feel because this has come from my community, do you feel like platonic relationships between men and women can genuinely exist as well?
Hmm. I definitely think that they can genuinely exist. I think it's unfortunate that we see this in the research that men are sort of socialized to approach women when they have romantic feelings more than when they have platonic ones. And so I think a lot of women have probably experienced like men trying to get close to them because there's sort of a romantic undertone to it. But I really think that that's more about socialization than reality, that, certainly men and women can be friends. There can be no attraction. I like to say, for if you are always gonna if you can't be friends with people you're attracted to, bisexual people are gonna be lonely for the rest of their lives. So I think that's something we have to break down, but I understand why there can be that concern. And I think when you are making friends across gender, it can be helpful to be very explicit. Like, I would like to be friends. Like, I really enjoy your company, and to use those words specifically because often there can be that fear of romantic attraction hovering over things.
Yeah. I would like to be friends. Would you like to be friends?
Yeah.
Like, very explicit, like, "Do you feel that way
Communication.
with me? And is that something that you are interested in?"
Yes, exactly.
Some of the language, you talked about when maintaining friendships, I think it's something I wanted to dive into because I know that while speaking with my community about this topic, they recognize that friendships are very important, but they recognize they have difficulty maintaining them.
Mhm.
And, I kind of wanted to dive into this with you a little bit more. Like, personally, I have moved several different states. Now I'm in Florida, but I'm
Mm,
originally from Massachusetts. And, you know, this has definitely affected my relationships. And I recognize that
mm.
that with people just in every life event changing, when I had children, that affected my friendships. Um, but kind of what advice would you give to people like me that have had those life events and have found it challenging to maintain friendships? What advice,
Yeah.
like, where should we start?
Yeah, well, first with empathy, that it is hard to maintain friendships, that, there's not necessarily structures to it like other relationships. It's beautiful because it's voluntary, but that also makes it more vulnerable. It's really normal for friendships to shift. Every 7 years, we lose about half our friends. So there's not something wrong with you, is where I just like to start there, that this is a sort of general problem. Um, the other place I'd like to start is just, we have this misconception that friendship is something that just really happens organically. I think this comes from childhood. There's the sociologist Rebecca G. Adams, and she says friendship happens organically when you see people repeatedly and you're vulnerable with them and it's unplanned. So that's like school, work. We're not having to text each other and figure out when we're going to meet. And we have that in childhood, but a lot of us don't have that in adulthood at all. Maybe we see people at work repeatedly, but we're not necessarily vulnerable with them. And so what that means is, if you rely on this assumption that it just happens organically, you're going to be lonely. And in fact, that's what we see in the research. People that see friendship as happening without effort are lonelier 5 years later. And so it's going to take effort, intentionality, reaching out, being vulnerable, sharing affection. These are all the things that really can help. For people that are really busy, I like to say, like, put it in the calendar so that it doesn't get crowded out with all your other priorities. Like maybe once a month, we're doing a dinner together. That's what me and my best friend have on our calendar, just to make it a little bit easier. But the last piece of advice that I have around this is about half of friendships do not continue to linearly increase in intimacy. They go up and down, and we feel close and then we feel less close. The
Yeah.
problem is when we feel less close, some of us assume that the friendship is over and can't help but compare it and see it as inferior. And people that see friendship as fragile in that way, they tend to disinvest in the friendship when it changes in its level of depth. And what happens is that becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy because now you're not reaching out, you're not engaging, the friendship will indeed become weaker. And so to also normalize that, hey, friendships go in and out of closeness, that doesn't mean that they're over and you can reinvest at any time.
Hey, you.
Thanks for getting in touch with the Thick Thighs Save Lives podcast.
We love your questions and adore hearing from you.
Leave us a hello,
A burning question,
feedback.
or anything else you want to share with us on the podcast.
We will play your message live on air if we can.
Thanks for being an amazing friend. Stay safe and moving. You know what? I think that's really powerful to hear. And that just like it brought up a personal experience for me because my best friend, I saw her every day. And then I moved away to Florida and she stayed in Massachusetts. And like we literally saw each other every day, spoke every day, multiple times a day. And then, and then I had a baby and it was kind of like, whoa, this is um our friendship kind of went with some ebbs and flows, but still called each other on Christmas. You know what I mean? And I think that like there was a moment where I was like, is our friendship over?
Mhm.
Like so dramatic because our friendship over. But I think you put some language to it because like both of us continued to reinvest in that it was a changing relationship. Um, but not one that was over, just a changing relationship that we needed to
Mhm.
invest in different ways. Like we weren't going to meet each other at the gym every day, and that's okay. That was going to be different, but maybe we're going to send videos. So that kind of like happened organically, but it didn't happen by accident. We both
Mm.
just, kind of made that decision to reinvest. And, during, it's hard to make time for that, but during moments you're like, oh, wow, I'm really glad I still have this person that I feel like is in my corner, that I feel like is, still a part of my life. And, you said something there that, you said loneliness is more damaging than poor diet or exercise.
Yep.
And I was hoping you could expand on this a little bit more.
Yeah. Yeah, when you look at meta-analyses, which are studies that combine all the existing studies that look at the effects of diet and exercise on lifespan, it's sort of like having a good diet, eating your vegetables, running, exercising, they decrease your risk of death by 25% around there. But having a large social network decreases your risk of death by about 45%.
Whoa.
Yeah, very high. I
That's
mean,
massive.
massive. And there's so much research showing that when we are connected, we perceive stress as less stressful. So there's just less wear and tear happening in our body. Like even people that look at a hill and estimate how steep it is, they actually estimate it as less steep when they're alongside a friend. There's research on the common cold that you're less likely to contract it if you have a larger, diverse social network. So, just like we
Mm.
need food, just like we need oxygen to function at our best, we really need social connection to function well too.
Yeah, that's interesting. Those numbers are really staggering. Because like it can be hard to quantify them. It can be hard to judge, what our friendships mean to us, what our relationships mean to us. But like, hey, you're going to live longer if you maintain relationships. Like that's that like, okay, that makes sense. But it just is like more proof that humans are such we rely on connection so deeply, and we're kind of
Hmm.
pulled into society, I feel right now, where it pulls us away from a lot of those connections. So it's really challenging, which is where you kind of said a lot of people want friendships to just happen to them,
Hmm.
but we have to invest in them.
We do.
And so what would you say to someone who is looking to invest in friendship, maybe a new friendship, or looking to reinvest in a friendship that maybe has fallen off but has been important to them?
Well, the first thing that I really emphasize in Platonic, and that I see, when I speak on how to make friends, is people are so afraid of rejection. So I like to share some research on that. That when people interact, they underestimate how like they are. According to the research, this is called the liking gap. And so, one thing that I try to tell people is if you want to make friends, you have to start by assuming that people will like you. This is based off of research on something called the acceptance prophecy. This finding that when people are told they'll be liked, even when this is a lie, they become more likable. They become more friendly and more open and more warm. Whereas when people think they're going to be rejected, they reject people. They become closed off, they become withdrawn. It becomes a self fulfilling prophecy. And so that's just really important to try to have hope and optimism that they could be waiting for a friend just like me. In fact, most people are. I mean, the average person is more lonely than they are saturated by connection. And so I think that's really important. Um, and then you just have to initiate, really. I mean, one thing that I will suggest to people who want to make new friends is joining a community where people meet regularly. So you do have that repeated unplanned interaction and shared vulnerability. And this capitalizes on something called the mere exposure effect. That's our tendency to like people that are familiar to us, completely unconscious. Researchers planted women into a psychology lecture. It was a big lecture. Nobody remembered the woman, but they liked the woman that showed up for the most classes 20% more than the one that showed up for least. So we just unconsciously like people after repeated exposure. So my issue with making friends would be I would show up once to the happy hour, I'd be like, nobody's talking to me. I'm not clicking with anyone. I'd leave and I'd
Yeah.
never come back. But you kind of have to stick it out for like 2 to 3 months. And then I say, generate exclusivity, which is you want to have experiences with one person that you don't have with other people. That's what connection, that's how you feel more connected to people. And that just looks like, hey, I really enjoyed being in this volleyball league with you or this mom group with you. Would you be open to getting dinner before our next group?
That's such a great I mean, I'm sure a lot of people have, like, equated that to how they meet people in their lives, but kind of stick it out is one of the things that stand out to me, because if you don't have that kind of, like, routine thing that you consistently go to, it's gonna be more difficult for you, essentially, to
Yeah.
make friends and to kind of, like, maintain that friendship. I know that, like, that sticks out to me because, like, every time I move I've lived in a lot of different states now, but every time I move, I join a gym, and it's a CrossFit gym, so it's not like we're all going in with headphones in. It's, a very community based. And then I'm like, okay, who's going to be my friends? We're all here doing this thing. Like, we should probably just end up being friends, right? Um, so that's like, but going into a new stage of my life and becoming a mom, like, I was like, I don't really have any mom friends. I have like gym friends,
Mhm.
but the kids are all at different ages, and I have a small baby, so I'm kind of like, well, hanging out with someone who has a 9-year-old is a little bit more challenging.
Mhm.
So then I guess it's just kind of like recognizing the stage that you're in and where you kind of like want to make friends, and then show up to
Yeah.
those places, right?
Yeah.
Like go there, do
Yeah.
the thing.
Go there, do the thing. And just related to these points, which I think are great, is that it's because of mere exposure, the implication of that is that if we're not familiar, we're uncomfortable, which means it's
Yeah.
going to be uncomfortable at first. It really is. That's normal. It's not a sign to leave. It's just part of the
It's not a sign to
process,
leave. Yeah.
part of how we're wired. The other thing that issue that I think we sometimes have is we engage in something called covert avoidance. And that happens when we show up physically, but check out mentally. I'm at the mom group, but I'm on my phone. I'm at the mom group, but I'm in the corner separated from everyone else, just like talking to my baby, right? Like you have to overcome covert avoidance by engaging with people when you get there, saying, hi, my name's Marissa. How have you liked this group so far? Like, what have you learned from it? What can you tell me? I think sometimes people worry about coming off too
Sure.
strong, but I think often the more often problem is you're not showing enough interest in other people. People like to be liked. They like when people engage with them and are curious about them.
Yeah, that's such a good point because I think like sometimes that can feel off-putting, but a lot of people when you're just uncomfortable, you kind of go a little bit more introverted and like on your phone and kind of like um mentally you're checked out. And if mentally we're checked out and then we're like, "Oh, that just didn't work." I went
Yeah.
there, but like mentally you weren't there and then you're mad that it didn't work out. So that's a great point because I know that I have personally done that, and I've been like, "Well, I just didn't need any friends there, but I really
Yeah.
was not engaged at all.
We've all done
Um,
it. I've definitely gone to groups and like, they're so clicky, they're not talking to me, but I've learned that I need to turn those questions that I ask of other people on myself, where I'm like, why isn't anyone coming up to me? Why isn't anyone saying hello? Why isn't anyone welcoming me? Am I saying hello? Am I welcoming people? Am I engaging with people? I also
mhm.
I think it's important that we hold ourselves accountable too. Otherwise, we can just feel really powerless and like we have no agency in this process of making friends.
Yeah, that's such a good point. Um, I wanted to ask you, why do you think that people are more afraid to say "I love you" to platonic friendships rather than romantic partners? Big question.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's seen as wrong to love friends too deeply, that's not quite platonic anymore. It's like we pretend that the degree of love determines the type of love, and that's not true, right? I can have a very
Yeah.
high platonic love, I can have very high romantic love, I can have very high sexual love, or I can have lower. And so I think this is a misconception that degree of love and affection determines type of love. But in fact, you can have that friend that you love, to the moon and back, that you feel like is one of your soulmates. And that doesn't make you weird. That makes you human.
Yeah. Yeah, that's such a I love the way that you put that. I also think like, sometimes we put love as this like pie. And I think like what how I've said this to my partner is like, "Psh, my heart's so big. I love you. I love my best friend. Like there isn't just like just enough to go around. Like there's
Yep.
so much and it's so different for every person. So it's not just like, well, you only have enough love for a romantic partner. Like
Yeah.
we have so much love that we can give, like we can just share it.
Yes, exactly. And I think sometimes people perceive, you're hanging out with your friends, you're not spending time with me, like this romantic love and platonic love and tension. But what we see in the research is that when people make a friend, not only are they less depressed, their partner becomes slightly less depressed. You're bringing in a resource to the relationship when you are
Mhm.
happier and feel more whole and in community. We see that when people get into fights with their spouses, it disrupts their release of the hormone cortisol, but not as much if they have community outside the relationship. So if you want a partner who is less stressed out, more well resourced to work through issues with you, bringing more happiness back into the relationship, then it is important that we encourage our partners to find love and connection outside of just us.
Yeah, that's a great point. Okay, so we need an entire community to feel whole. You mentioned that women report feeling more intimacy with their female partners than with their intimate partners. So this is important for us just as whole humans. So how do we let go of the hierarchy we place on love?
Hmm. There was this moment I had a friend that I wanted to get close to who was coming back from the a trip, and she's coming back really late. And I was like, "Ugh, I could drive her home, but I don't like staying up late." So I literally had to ask myself, would I do this for a romantic partner? And I said, "Yeah, I probably would." And so I was like, "Okay, then why wouldn't I do it to a friend that I want to be really close to?" And, obviously you can't ask that question about every single one of your friends. You have to know which of the friends you really want to invest in. But I think part of the ways that we decrease the hierarchy is that we ask ourselves those questions, right? Like, would I do this in romantic partnership? If I'm not doing it here, why am I not doing it here? Is this something that I want to express and act authentically reflects what I feel? And am I just not sharing it because of this paradigm that I've been taught rather than because it doesn't actually reflect what I want in this relationship?
That's an excellent way to to put that. Just reconstruct it in our minds, and then our actions are really going to follow the type of investment that we're going to have into these relationships. And I think that's such an important one to really just think about as we make some of those decisions.
quick interruption. Guys, we are always talking about the importance of community to help you along your journey, to keep you motivated, to surround you with like-minded people. And we have a massive, massive community to do just that. If you haven't already, get in our fitness group on Facebook, Fitness Programming by CVG. Get on our app, CVG Nation. We've got hundreds of thousands of women on there who are just waiting to cheer you on. And we cannot wait to meet you. Get with us on our channels. We love to see you there.
So I do have some like kind of rapid fire questions from I pulled my community to see like what they wanted to hear, what they wanted to get from this podcast, and what were some of the questions that they had about friendship. So I'm just gonna rattle some of them off. And some of them we kind of covered, but I just want to, point blank ask them how in their words. How do I make friends as an adult?
Mm. You have to initiate, assume people like you, show up at places where you can connect. And once you do, get off your phone, introduce yourself to people, shoot your shot. I'd love to hang out. I've had such a great time with you. Would you be open to spending time together?
Love it. Shoot your shot. How do I stop assuming people will not like me?
I think that there is room for our critical voices. I don't believe in suppressing parts of yourself, because that's a part that's trying to protect you, right, from getting rejected or getting hurt. And it's okay to acknowledge that that's there, but that's also not the only thing that's there, right? That there probably is a part of you that is more hopeful or that is more optimistic. And one of the ways you can access that is, how would I act if if I were to think that this person likes me, and is invested in me? And you can navigate the relationship better if you think about and reflect on that question. Or how would I act if I didn't perceive this person's behavior for me as a reflection of my own self worth? How would I act differently? And so I think those reflection questions can allow us to access that. I think within all of us, there's a part of us that is secure, and it's just about leaning on that part, focusing on that part, attending to that part more.
How long should I wait before deciding a friendship isn't mutual?
Mm. This is a hard one to say. The reason it's hard to
Yeah.
say is, well, how do you define mutuality? Because there's a lot of people that are afraid of being a burden. They really never reach out because, and it's not because they don't like you. I mean, I see my students, I teach a class on how to make friends. It's because they have their own insecurities. But it's also
Yeah.
okay for you to say that that doesn't necessarily match what I want. And so, if I were to put a number on it, like ask to hang out twice and then reach out just to check in. And at that point, you're not getting any sort of reciprocity, then you can find other people that might give you more reciprocity. One thing that I also suggest is finding transitioners. People that are at times of transition in their life tend to be more open to friendship. So someone that just moved, or if someone just had a baby and you're the other mom friend, or they just, they're graduating school or they're starting school, they're starting in the new job, like those transitioners tend to be more open to reciprocity.
Yeah, that's some great advice. That's a tough one to answer. I mean, like mutual, and it can look so different on every person, like I know that I've met people and had great interactions with them in person, and they said like, you never text me back, like, do you not want to talk? And I'm like, no, I do. I'm really not a great texter.
Hmm.
um so I know that sometimes like it's sometimes important to define like what is mutual, because it may not look the same for every person. Like what
Hmm.
you feel like is an investment may not feel the same for someone else. Like, depending on time, and there's some limitations to that, but it's just like we all kind of have these different definitions of what an investment looks like with another person, and they
Absolutely.
definitely don't always match up.
Yep, you are totally right. I mean, I'm a proponent of like, I mean, easier said than done, like not taking it personally. Everyone just has different styles that they tend to express across their different connections, not just to you in terms of how often they might reach out or their texting style, for example. Like one of my students put it, texting is a middleman that may or may not reflect how you actually feel about the person. And
Yeah.
that's why it's so hard to understand what's going on.
when you read it in a tone and you're like, "Wait a minute." Like, that's that's how I sent it, like, you added a tone to it. Um, is it just normal to outgrow friends, and should I just accept it?
It is absolutely normal to outgrow friends. It's not something that we talk about enough. And we also one of the reasons we outgrow friends is that we don't talk about the issues.
Mm.
When there's conflict in friendship, people tend to withdraw rather than address the problem. This is not something that I'd recommend because when I ask you, would you want your friend to withdraw from you whenever bringing up without bringing up the problem and giving you a chance to work through it? People say no, but yet they'll tend to do this to their friends. So, before you decide you've outgrown a friend, have you told them what you need? um, and maybe you have outgrown them, right? But making sure you're first doing that work and giving that opportunity for repair before making that assumption, I think, is really important.
That's gonna hit home with a lot of people. I hear that. Is there such a thing as too much effort in a friendship?
Well, some people who are more anxiously attached, these are the people that tend to really fear rejection, think that people don't like them, think that people will abandon them, tend to cling very close to people. They tend to invest in people that don't invest in them. They tend to invest in people to get people to like them. And so they tend to invest in people that are less available or less interested. And so I say, if people don't seem to like you, walk away, don't work harder. You want to invest in the people that are excited to talk to you and excited to spend time with you. And so, if you're feeling like I'm doing this because I need their attention and affection rather than because I feel treated well and I feel liked and I feel valued in that relationship, then I think it's important to be reflective about the effort that you want to put into it.
That's such a good point. I have a friend who has a very anxious attachment style, and she goes after people for their friendship that are not reciprocating. Like, they are just
Mhm.
not, and then she just tries harder, and
Mm.
then they, have this very much like, "Oh, I give a little, then I pull away," and I'm just like, "This is damaging every time. Like, you are so amazing. You bring so much to every relationship that you're in. Why are you chasing these people who don't appreciate it?"
There you go. You shouldn't have to earn love in this way. Let it be given freely.
Mhm. Oh, man, it's a tough one. Um, okay, let's be honest. Some friendships are made out of constant proximity. Are these friendships real?
Yes, I do think locationships are real friendships. I think we do ourselves a disservice when we think about what love is real and what love isn't versus each is an offering that's unique in its own way. And the locationship is offering you company, it's offering you companionship. These are legitimate needs that we all have. And often people meet more people through the people they already know. So even if you're like, these aren't ultimately my people, right? They expose you to a larger network as well. And so I think we can see the value in all types of connection rather than just being like, these are my standards for connection. If you don't meet it, you're out. If you do meet it, you're in. And that's the beauty of friendship, right? It's not like romantic relationship where it's like we're married or we're divorced. There's just all different gradients and all different steps. And sometimes, I talk about, I have a newsletter. I wrote an article about how distance can create intimacy, that with certain relationships, when we're at a greater level of distance, we feel closer to each other than when we try to establish more closeness. And it's more about finding the right level for a particular relationship than it is feeling like every relationship needs to be so close.
Yeah. Would you say the same thing for friendships that we make through our romantic partners? Like, your romantic partner has a best friend and you meet either him or his wife or his girlfriend, whatever, and you become friends. Do you think those are essentially like real friendships?
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking about how we're defining real. Like, is it something
Yeah.
that you feel like you're just doing because of the circumstance and the ease versus is this someone that you feel more deeply connected to? And I wonder if we're saying that word real as like, I feel like a deeper connection to this person. And that's why it can feel kind of unsatisfying. But I would say, like, first of all, there's probably things that you are getting from it too. And second of all, don't let the structure determine the relationship. I think often when it's like, oh, they're my work friend, right? Or they're my friend I met, they're my partner, my friend's part, this whole like, and thus the relationship must mean this. Thus the level of closeness must mean this, right?
Mm.
And you can break out of that, right? You can say, hey, I kind of want to get to know you more one on one. I know we just keep seeing each other in this group amongst the couples, but it would be great to like get to know you better. And so to also remember our agency, that the structure can create and encourage a certain type of connection, but that we also have power to determine the type of connection that we want with someone.
Yeah, that's so true. How do you stop ghosting friendships without realizing it?
Oh, you tell your friends, hey, I'm a bad tester. And I still love you, but I want you to know that. And if you need to reach me, maybe like FaceTime me or like find me on Instagram or, like feel free to double text. Like I actually really appreciate that. And so because people tend to see rejection when it's not there, if you know that there's something that you do that might trigger those fears in someone, just be upfront about it before that happens.
Yeah, that's some great advice. I think that I've done that accidentally without like really realizing it, but just being like super authentic about it and being like, "Hey, like I don't feel invaded if you double text me.
Hmm.
I do not feel like you're bothersome or like any of these other things that you might have like internalized from assumptions or past experiences, trauma, whatever. Like we all bring certain things into every relationship that we're in, and we all bring our junk into it.
Hmm.
And that's when something happens, that's the stuff that comes up. But so like a lot of times, like just being like very straight up about that, being like, hey, I value your friendship. I would love to text you back. When I read it, a baby peeped on me, and then I forgot everything that happened after that. Okay, I think that this has been super helpful for a lot of us who um, need to redefine, and I know that this has been super helpful for me to redefine friendship and what it means to each of us in our lives and how we can invest in it because it's literally going to help us live longer, but a better, more fulfilling life. And I know that people want to hear, my listeners will want to hear more from you. Where can they find you?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram at Dr. Marisa G. Franco. That's DrMarisagFranco. On my website, drmarisagfranco.com, you can take that quiz that assesses your strengths and weaknesses as a friend, or you can reach out to have me speak on how to make friends or how to find belonging at work.
I love it. Definitely take that quiz too, guys, because you'll find your strengths and weaknesses and it'll kind of help you. Just, it feels more like individualized, where I'm like, oh, this is where I, I'm a person who loves to know like where my shortcomings are so that I'm just like even aware of them enough to say like, oh, that's one of them. Thank you for bringing that up. Like,
Hmm.
I'm working on that. I'm putting investment into that. So I would definitely say check out that quiz and figure out what kind of friend you are. Thank you so much for coming on and talking about this very important topic with us. And I hope everyone checks out your website.
Yeah, my pleasure. My book Platonic has more in depth as to what I said, and the thing I like to leave your listeners with is what my niece told me when she read it, which is for friendship to happen, someone has to be brave. So be brave.
Yeah, that's so true. Amazing how we're so apprehensive about being brave with friendships too.
Yeah,
Thank you so much, Marissa.
my pleasure.